Elephanta is a unique monument. People have registered, visitors have registered their own opinions in different ways, especially in the initial years when so many foreign travelers they came to India. They were many times surprised because of the nature of these monuments. These are rock-cut monuments. So many times the questions were raised whether India really had that type of technology, understanding, and artistic background to have such type of monuments. It was a surprise for them that in a country like India, which was supposed to be a pagan country, not having that higher type of intellectual background or philosophical background or ethical background, that they should be able to have this. Just to take up the case of rock-cut monuments, Ferguson has spent a lot of, you can say, space in its work as to the origin of these types of monuments. And he similarly says that the Egyptians are famous, the Romans are famous, the Persians are famous. And it is just possible that as there was a contact of the Persians and also the Greeks and Romans with northwest India during the time of the Maurya dynasty, as there was an ambassador who had come as an ambassador from a Greek king, Seleucus Nicator, and as Chandragupta Maurya is supposed to have matrimonial relationships. So through that particular contact, it is just possible that such an art or a craft must have been developed in India. Because its first occurrence is again connected with the Mauryas. That is, the most ancient caves known in India are those at Barabar in the district of Gaya in Bihar. And the inscriptions connected are with Ashoka Maurya. So there was some connection found, and then they could explain. Some scholars who have worked in the forests of Vidarbha area, that is, you can say the districts of Chandrapur, then Gadchiroli, there rock-cut monuments have been found. And there is a practice among the megalithic people whose dates can be given as something like 1000 BC to about 600 BC in the area, because settlements have been found. Those have been studied by teams from the Nagpur University and the state of Maharashtra, and they have come to the conclusion that people knew iron. The iron was of very high quality, about 96% purity of the iron. And the megalithic people having a tradition of putting the carnal remains of the dead in such type of caves. Similar caves of a later period have been reported even from Kerala, which are called the bottle graves, wherein you can descend into it, but it is very difficult to come out of it. They have been shaped in such a manner. So these practices, if they are associated with the proto-historic people who didn't have any script or writing, if they could have that, and these people were there before the early historical period, so we need not go to the far off conclusion to say that this craft was unknown to the Indian people, cannot be accepted. And we have got evidence now. For example, some caves which can be dated to Satavahana period, they carry the traditions of the megalithic people. Scientific discoveries also can be made in different two parts of the world without anybody knowing the work of the other. Even though the earliest caves have been found in Gangetic Valley, you don't find many rock-cut caves. Whereas in the Deccan, you find practically about 70% of the rock-cut caves of the whole of India in the Deccan. It is because this rock is more suitable for cutting. Elephanta as we know it, because of the elephant which was found there, the island was named as Elephanta. Probably, popularly, it is known as Dharapuri, which has its origin back into a Sanskrit word called Agraharapuri. Agrahara meaning a place donated to the Pandits. So for their you can say spiritual and religious practices, the revenue of that particular area is assigned to them by the king, and therefore it is called the Agraharapuri. So it was not simply an Agraharapuri, as we would like to etymologize that word, but it was also probably a royal seat. And therefore scholars like Mr. Harihar Thoser, who has produced a very good volume on important inscriptions of Maharashtra, says that it was probably capital through successive periods. It was probably the capital of the Triputakars, Mauryas, because all these dynasties which ruled in the western Konkan coast or strip, it was a very good harbour, it was a prosperous harbour, it was a religious place as we know because of the monuments. And from the archaeological remains which have been found at Mora Bandar and Shet Bandar, these are the popular names which are still preserved. So these were probably the places where jetties were there, where ships came. And the descriptions in the inscriptions also testify to that. So this must have been a royal seat also. Archaeologically speaking, there can be said to be two types of monuments which are there. One is the Buddhist, because some of the rock-cut caves which are very simple now have been interpreted by scholars after thought that, well, those might be Buddhist sails. Then beyond the main area where the caves are there, that is the big caves associated with Pashupata cult, there are so many establishments, including a stupa which is there on a hill beyond. If you visit the place, you will find the remains of a stupa. There are some remains such as a lion figure, which according to Gorakshakar goes at least back to the Kushan period, that is 2nd century AD. There must have been a stupa of the early historical period, to put it very simply, Buddhist stupa, and also probably a settlement of the monks, which was supported by the prosperous, you can say, island, which was either not only a prosperous city but also probably a royal seat. So we'll find that the sails are also the stupa very clearly testify to the existence of a Buddhist community there. And side by side we also find these big caves which are there. And naturally these are the most beautiful caves you can see in Western India. Scholars have dated them to different periods. Say for example, there will be some scholars who will go to the extent of saying that these are Rashtrakuta caves. That is how Ferguson will understand it. Professor Gupte thinks that, as also Dr. Brahmananda Deshpande, they are of the, and Saundarrajan, who is a great authority on South Indian architecture. They think that these are Chalukyan caves. Whereas Professor Spink, probably also Colin Smith, they all think that these might be assigned to what is called the Kalachuri period. Now, what is Kalachuri period? There are hardly 2 or 3 important kings who come after the fall of the Vakataka dynasty. In the eastern India, these are Vishnukundins who come up as the successors of the Satavahana, as the Vakatakas. Similarly, the Kalachuris also come up as the successors of the Vakatakas. Professor Mirashi, Professor Spink have gone into the detail, written a lot about it, and they purport to say that probably the Kalachuris, it is just possible, where probably had blood relation with the Vakatakas, probably one of the princesses, Vakataka princesses, as Professor Spink puts it, probably the granddaughter of great Harishen, married one of the Kalachuri princes. Those who say that, well, this was the Chalukyan monument or something like that. They will have to accept one thing, and that is that the Chalukyan monuments, as we know from Avalaya, Badami and Patronage, they are not similar stylistically with the sculpture which we find here. If we look at it from a finer point of view, then in that case, it will be probably for them to establish that the type of cults which are reflected, Pashupata or Shaiva cults which are reflected in the monuments at Avalaya, Badami, Patronage, they have similarity with the monuments like those at Elephanta, the great cave at Elephanta, cave number 29 at Elephanta, and at Jogeshwari. So these three monuments, they are very much similar to each other from the iconographic point of view. The scheme of the icons which is to be seen, the placement of the icons on the monument, which is a key to understand a monument, they have a great similarity. It is very easy to say that probably Ellora was also under the influence of the Chalukyas. But again, the same difficulty will be there, that the monuments at Ellora, especially caves number 15, 16 and other places, those are definitely different from the Chalukyan monuments. They may have certain similarities, but scholars will be at a difficulty to show the identity of it and common patronage of it. The caves at Mandapeshwar, then the caves at Jogeshwari, the cave number 29 at Ellora, and the Elephanta, the great cave, they are very much similar on plan, wherein a scheme has been there and as has been made very lucid because of very short article by Stella Kramrisch. It has been, now we have been able to understand the monuments. Stella Kramrisch, in her very wonderful seminal article which was published in Ancient India, says that if you see these caves, the architecture is totally different because the requirements of the architect and requirements of the naturally religious worship which was required there was peculiar, and taking into consideration those peculiarities, the architecture has been framed. So what was those things? The basic thing is that they say that this meets the Pashupata Siddhanta. Now, Collins has worked in detail on that. I would advise those who have any doubts regarding the affiliation and understanding of the model which has been given by Stella Kramrisch to go through the details which have been given in the study of Colin Smith. He says, and he wants to prove, that if we try to understand the Pashupata Siddhanta, as it is called, as per the Lakula Sutras or the Shaiva Sutras, then in that case, it is necessary for a person to start his spiritual progress after his initiation in a particular way. It has been told, for example, in one of the commentaries, which is of 8th century AD, it says that a Pashupata initiate can be married or may be a monk. So a sadhaka can be a married person or a monk also. At least at the initial stage, it is not necessary for him to be a monk. After his initiation, he has to spend some time in the house of his acharya. His, you can say, person who has given him the diksha. Right. So one who has been responsible for his diksha, in his house he lives for some time. Then after that, he lives in a Shiva temple for some time. At the third stage, he lives in a cave. And in the last stage, he lives in a smashana. And during the course of this development also, there are 5 forms of Pashupati which are to be meditated upon. First of all, it is Sadyojata, then it is Vamadeva, then it is Aghora, and then it is Tatpurusha, and then Ishana. It is in the last stage while he is living in a cemetery, that he has to meditate upon Ishana, whose usually form is not depicted. Whenever there is a Sadashiva Shilpa which seeks to depict all these 5 forms, only 4 faces are to be seen to the naked eye, or to the eye, to the human eye. The 5th face, which is on the top, is supposed to be present there, but not in a manifest form. So Sadashiva, when he is to be approached, so if we enter the cave from the northern side, we see a huge statue which is there more than 14 feet or higher, showing 3 faces. The 4th face is supposed to be inherent, not to be seen, but it was supposed to be there. There are many Shivalingas which have got all these 4 faces, such as at Nashna Kuthara and other places, where a Shivalinga is endowed with 4 faces. But then the worshipper is all the time aware that the 5th face of Ishana is there, even if it is not to be seen.
It's beautiful.
So one requirement that a Pashupata sadhaka has to undergo, or he develops spiritually himself, meditating upon the 5 aspects of Shiva. So that one important aspect is very much there. The other aspect is that is the popular Shiva as is known through the legends which are known from the Puranas. He is the most popular aspect. He is called Maheshwara. He is usually iconographically said to be having 10 arms, 10 attributes. If you go to the Prince of Wales Museum, there is a you can say replica which has been put there of the Shiva image, which is that purple. Now the image which is on the top of that has 10 arms. So he is that Maheshwara who has been sought to be depicted there. Similarly, the Parel Shiva is not understood properly. According to me, the Parel Shiva image tells you about the 3 aspects of Shiva, which has been told by Stella Kramrisch in her that seminal article. How he is to be depicted? He is conceived in the form, in the non-manifest form. Then he is conceived in the manifest and non-manifest form. And he is conceived in a totally manifest form. To put it in the technical Sanskrit words, it will be Sakala, that is fully manifest form, Sakala Nishkala, that is partly manifest and partly non-manifest form, and Nishkala, that is non-manifest form. Now this non-manifest form, the Shaiva worshippers depict in the form of a Shiva Linga, which is an abstract form of Shiva. It doesn't have any face, it doesn't have any limbs, and therefore that can be called Nishkala. The part manifest and part non-manifest is Sadashiva, which has been depicted, which is usually known as Maheshwara Murti or Trimurti, popularly known as Trimurti. And there are 8 panels, sculptural panels, which tell you about the different legions of Rudra Shiva, who is an ambivalent divinity. Ambivalent in the sense he is malevolent and at the same time he is benign, benevolent also. So there are something like, as it is called, Saumya Murtis and Raudra Murtis, or the Samhara Murtis. And the composition has been done, the studies of George Michel or Carmel Bergson or even Stella Kramrisch show us that all these opposite characters of Shiva, they have been depicted in the 8 panels which are there. Considering these panels, one realizes that here are the different legions which are connected with the Shiva, as known from the epics, Ramayana and Mahabharata, and later on also the Puranas. When I am using the word later on, I am not in any way giving less importance to the evidence from Puranas. It is very clear that the epics were written and finalized by 3rd century AD, whereas the finalization of the Puranas even though their antiquity goes back sometimes to even 6th century BC, is not before 5th, 6th century AD. So the legends of Shiva and his ambivalent character as a malignant as also a benevolent god is known from all these legends, and these are connected with how even after the practicing of the penance, even if a person is an asura, a demon, not quite complementary to the working of the gods, even he is given a boon when Rudra, who is benevolent par excellence, gives a boon. Sometimes even he had to suffer because of such a type of thing, known from the legend of Jalandhara, who is ready to kill Shiva himself, who gave him the boon. So this type of character is shown very clearly, all these legends, that Rudra is married. When you think about Shiva, Parashiva, which is the first principle of creation, we cannot think about his marriage. So here is a Shiva who is on the lower level, worshipped by the common people for the sake of their worldly desires and also sometimes for the spiritual progress. But it is mainly for the worldly desires that such a type of Shiva is worshipped by the people. So these three levels of Shiva, Rudra Shiva as we can call it, that is Sakala Nishkala, Nishkala and Sakala, they have been, all these aspects have been very intelligently put in the iconographic scheme which is to be seen here. So that is why there are two entrances for this cave. And therefore, when one enters from the east, he sees the Nishkala Shiva in a shrine which has got 4 doors, Sarvato Bhadra, because it can be seen from all the sides. And whereas he has to see the higher aspect, or in a way, as compared to the Nishkala, the lower aspect of Shiva, that is Sakala Nishkala, he enters from the door which comes from the north. And therefore, to accommodate all this Pashupata Shastra and its behavior, that these caves were made. Say for example, when I told you that, well, an initiate has first of all lived in the house of his Acharya, it is just possible that there might have been some monasteries probably built in brick, just possible in water and dog, that the Acharya might be living in a small ashrama there, so he was living there. Then when it came to a temple, as we know, it is called cave temple. So it is a temple at the same time a cave. So the sadhaka can come there. And then as it is a cave, for his later developments also he remained there. So this way, cave temple was very much suitable for Pashupata sadhaka at Ellora. For example, there is a complete group of small caves, which must have been, as the observation, those are referred to as the Ganesh Lena caves, which are on the side of a group which falls into a valley, you can say, or a ravine. Actually, it is a small group. It takes its origin on the Mahismar plateau, which is on the top of the Ellora caves. So it is current only during the rainy season, but caves have been carved on both the sides of that current, and that current falls into what is called the Sita Ki Nahani, just near another cave which is very much similar to the cave at Elephanta, that is cave number 29. And there is another Shaiva, you can say, settlement which is very important, or a Tirtha which is very important, that is Mukteshwara, one of the 12 Jyotirlingas. So it is a Shaiva area, you can say. There in those small caves, such type of, you can say, Sadashiva images have been depicted. So even in a cave wherein only a sadhaka could live, so there probably he was living in a cave and he was by himself, meditating upon the different aspects of Shiva. So all all these caves are also, in a way, they bring forth one very clear thing, and that is all these caves were meant for the Pashupata Sadhakas culture at Elephanta, which is unique, as I said. That sculpture has great similarities with the sculptures which have been found at Shamraji and Roda. In fact, Dr. U.P. Shah, a great scholar in this field, he has written a small monograph on these caves which are, on these sculptures which are there. They have a great similarity with the sculptures at. And then there is another scholar from the United States who has worked, Sara Sashwat, who has worked, Dr. Sara Sashwat, who has worked on these sculptures of Shamraji. And she has come to the conclusion that, well, these are probably again of the Kalachuri period, dated to something like 550 AD, very much near to their capital, which was at Maheshmati, on Narmada. There is one more thing which has to be brought about from the sculptural point of view. That is the peak point of Indian sculpture when we see that, meaning, of course, the Gupta sculpture is one of the best sculptures in India. In fact, that is called the classical sculpture. There is no doubt regarding that. This is post-Gupta, but at the same time, it is very much unique. And as Professor U.P. Shah would make us believe, that this was part of the Western Indian school of sculpture, which has been referred to by Taranath again in his history of Buddhism. And this school of sculpture, to some extent, has been influenced by the Gandhara sculpture. So it has got its uniqueness from that point of view. It is not a coincidence that the Shilpa texts give their Chitra Sutra, for example, which tells about the various proportions which have been given of a given image of the different types of celestial beings. So all the celestial beings, they are not of the same proportions. Some are in Navatala, some are in Dashatala, some are in Ashtatalas, Saptatala, and even Shattala. So the Ganas are in the lower phase. Then the others are in the higher stage. The consort of the god is something like just less than the Navatala. And when he is to be shown as the supreme, he is probably many times Dashatala. There are directions which are given regarding the various postures which are there when an image is to be made. So there are 6 types of postures which have been told. That is, which looks in front, which is from the back, which is sideways, and also 2 more, you can say, which are in between. If you carefully see the images at Elephanta, you will see that probably these sculptors they were aware of all these conventions. And therefore, we can say that this was the peak time. All these things were formed in Gupta period, and their best results you find at Elephanta. So they not only meet the different requirements which are given in the classical texts about the images or the sculptures which are to be made. Ferguson has a wonderful observation to make. He says that if you study the sculpture of Borobudur in Southeast Asia, it is a unique monument. The type of monument which has been created of 3 stories and the huge, you can say, proportions of that monument has no equal in Buddhist art anywhere in the world. But if you compare the sculpture, you have to come to one conclusion, that, well, the artist must have gone from Western India, must have come from Ellora. That's how he very clearly says that the type of sculpture which you get at Ellora, the type of architecture which we find at Borobudur and other places, you cannot explain its uniqueness without trying to understand its origins and roots which are there in Western India. So this is also unique from that point of view. Elephanta and Ellora, they are connected, no? See, let me explain one thing. As Professor Spink has reconstructed the whole thing, his understanding of the Kalachuri sculpture, he says that the first experiments were made at Jogeshwari, wherein a subterranean cave has been created in order to meet these requirements of the three levels of images which are understood in the Pashupata doctrine. And therefore we find that in the middle now there is one Sarvato Bhadra shrine which has got a Shivalinga. The ideas are not very clear about the ideas regarding Nishkala, Sakala Nishkala, all those ideas are clear. But at the same time, their placement is not very clear. At the same time, the type of Sadashiva image which we find at Elephanta, it is absent there. But the type of panels which we find, the 8 panels which are there, their remains are there at Yogeshwari. So he thinks that the thing was conceived at Yogeshwari. My own article in collaboration with a great person, that is M.N. Deshpande, we have come to the same conclusion that, well, the caves at Yogeshwari and those at Lonard, they are interconnected. Those are Buddhist caves. But the pillar order and the type of sculpture which you find at Lonard and at Yogeshwari, they are of the same period, roughly about, say, something like 480 or something like that. There is one more factor which is to be emphasized, and that is my own personal observation and sort of a hypothesis, that there was something like a rivalry which was going on between the Buddhists and the Pashupatas. It is not a coincidence. I made a reference to the sculptures at Shamraji. Near Shamraji there is a Buddhist stupa which is called Devani Mori. That is a monument which is in front of the god. The god is Shamraji, and in front there is a stupa which has been excavated by the Baroda University and dated to something like 3rd century AD. Those sculptures as Shamraji and Roda are of the Kalashuri period. We find that a Buddhist monument is there of again 2nd, 3rd century AD, and the presence of the Pashupatas is there. If you go to Ayhole Badam Pattadakal, you will find that near the Megudi temple there is a small cave which, because of the depiction of the Jatakas and depiction of Avalokiteshvara, is a Buddhist cave. But again, there are Shakta caves, the Shaiva caves which are there, Pashupata caves which are there, Pashupata temples are there. Then, if you go to any place, if you go to Andhra Pradesh, you will find that on one side there is a Buddhist monument, on the other immediately there is a Shakta monument. This rivalry goes through Orissa to Central Asia. If you see the paintings at Kisil, there will be some ascetics which have been depicted. They are definitely Pashupata. So in pursuit of their rivals, the Pashupatas have reached Khotan and Central Asia. So their rivalry goes on. And what happens in the Deccan, that ultimately my own hypothesis is that well, it is just possible that all these Buddhist monks, which had remained in small pockets now, they were not in great, you can say, number, as also in the number of caves, as also followers, in 5th century AD, because of given reasons. There is another topic which we can discuss, that the Buddhist monks were losing their base among the masses. The cults like Laja Gauri and others, they are assimilated by the Pashupatas. If you go to cave number 21 at Ellora, Laja Gauri has been depicted there. Right. And now it has become Sanskrit Buddhism. People are courtiers. If you go to Ajanta, they are either big ministers or traders and others who are following Buddhism, and therefore they have lost their mass base. Same thing happens in Vidarbha area. Now the tribals are accepting the cult of Narasimha, that is the Bhagavata cult. Then evidence is there for the support of Shaivism also at places like Deulwada. So Buddhism is losing its ground in Maharashtra, and therefore all these people, they got converted to either Shaivism or Vaishnava. Same thing happens in the later period. There is a last pocket of Vajrayana Buddhism at Panarikaji, very substantially proved by Arvind Deshpande that the settlement at Panarikaji, which was a Vajrayana Buddhist settlement, was converted to Nathapanta. So this process is happening all the time. And the same thing happens, as I told you, on the same route. that if you go to Andhra Pradesh, people have become now Shaktas or Vaishnavas, the Shaivas or Vaishnavas. If you go to Orissa, the same thing happens.
Right.
That after 1000 AD, when they are attacked by the attacking Turks from Central Asia,
Yeah.
the monasteries are totally lost, and therefore there was no other way. Either they become Baul sannyasis, which is affiliated to Vaishnavism, or they become Shaivas. So this is the way the whole thing is happening, and from that point of view, look at cave number 15 at Ellora, which began as a Buddhist cave, but was virtually converted by the great warrior Dantidurga, who was a vassal of the Chalukya sovereigns and declared his independence. And then comes the great monument at Ellora, but it is preceded by caves number 21, 22 and 29, which are of the Pashupata lineage. So all this was going on. So Elephanta is also very crucial, not simply important, crucial from the point of view of understanding the ups and downs in the following of the different cults and religious traditions. I never called them religions.
Right.
There were three religious traditions in India: the Jain, the Buddhist, and the Hindu in general, including Shaiva, Vaishnava and other things. So it is very interesting to study this give and take, superiority, sometimes inferiority, ascending and recession of all these with the help of the monuments. And Elephanta is the best thing to understand these things according to me. Curzon, whom we many times curse for his division of Bengal, was the person who was responsible for establishing the Department of Archaeology in India. And that is why we can proudly say that India is a unique country. We don't know much about China. Only China can vie with us. Regarding antiquity, as also the plethora of monuments. We are the only country where, according to my earlier estimates, earlier information, there are 5,000 protected monuments in the country. 3,500 by the Archaeological Survey of India and 1,500 by the states. We'll have to revise these figures. Because when I started my career as first director of archaeology in Maharashtra at the state level, 168 monuments were there. Now today, there are about 300 monuments which have been declared as protected. So you can take that figure to a large extent. It is just possible that about 6,000 to 7,000 monuments are now declared as protected. There are many good conservationists like M.N. Deshpande who stored the 7 echo impact of gold gumbas. Can you imagine?
7 echo impact of the?
7 echo effect of gold gumbas was lost.
Right.
By
He restored.
50s. By 50s. He was the superintending archaeologist of the southwestern circle, that is the Aurangabad circle. He restored that. He was an archaeologist in the sense, he was a field archaeologist. He was an excavator, he was an art historian, but he was not trained as a conservationist. He could do it with the help of, he consulted the engineers, tried to understand from them, and with their help, structural engineers, he restored that. So, in the initial stages, all that type of thing was there. Now, the whole thing has to be rigorously done. People, right from the stage of a curatorial, a conservation assistant to the director of conservation, everybody has to undergo training. And you can say, revise his knowledge from time to time, learn things. So many things are happening. There are so many institutions of conservation. Say, for example, there is an Institute of Conservation at Lucknow. Instead of criticizing, you have to be aware on all different levels, and I take media also as a part of that they have to say, and persons who are forming the you can say policies, that is at the state level as also at the central level. One has to compliment Manmohan Singh ji. He said that, well, budget in central budget we can provide for the state monuments also. Earlier, a view was taken, a state should own that. Not only that, we have to take into consideration with ourselves the Jilla Parishads.
Right.
They have to provide for conservation and looking after the monuments. Jilla Parishad should be partly how it is to be done. It is to be done by the persons who make the laws. I can give the advice at the most. I cannot frame the law. So all these factors have to be taken into consideration. For me, I am hopeful. Whatever defects and drawbacks are there, we ourselves are responsible for it. We should have an introspection for that and go ahead. That is my message.
Thank you so much. That was wonderful.